There are many difficult platinums PlayStation players have had to face over the years, and most of them have become iconic and well known due to their difficulty. You've got some that are classics, some that are more recent, but then occasionally you come across a game where the difficulty comes from not the trophy game or difficulty itself, but rather the programming of the trophy and PlayStation Network. I know at first that sounds confusing, but to put it brief, it's pretty much when a trophy is bugged. This can happen sometimes with games, and it's a little weird. Sometimes a game's trophies are glitched, and it seems no matter what you do, you can't obtain it, but then suddenly one day it pops. Other times you can unlock the trophy unsuspectingly while attempting a different trophy, or even just logging into your PlayStation. And other times it seems you just simply can't unlock it. Now personally, this doesn't happen too often to me, but then again, I'm not one of those trophy hunters where I attempt every single trophy of every single game I play. But it has happened to me a handful of times, and this is a game where it has happened to a bunch of people. And I mean a bunch of people. So despite the title, this video isn't to crap on the game by a long shot. In fact, I actually love this game and the care put into it. I even believe this game represents what Avengers could have been based on what people have told me, and even planned on possibly making a video praising it someday. It's just originally I was planning on getting this game's platinum and making a video out of it, so obviously it's going to be a bit different from the other platinum videos I have done. But I will still try to keep the roots of my platinum video style in here, while also explaining exactly just how hard this platinum was to deal with, how I managed to get it, and how you can get it as well. For starters, these are some of the trophies I earned in the main playthrough, quite a few missing, hence why there are some automatic screenshots that PlayStation made. But I thought I'd still include them. So about 30 of these trophies aren't included. The main focus for this video is the glitch trophy that has caused people so much trouble. Lore Order. So as I've mentioned, I've actually been playing this platinum video for a long time. Actually, as soon as I beat the game, which by this point, crazy as it is to say it, was a year ago. So over the summer, I attempted it multiple times. And I'm basically just gonna get into the meat of it. Would say pause, but apparently I gotta say no diddy now. Pretty much, I've got all these clips of me attempting to get the Lore Hoarder trophy in Guardians of the Galaxy. And the ironic thing about it is, I only had about 4 trophies left after I initially beat the game. Groot Canal, Thoughtful Captain, Lore Hoarder, and Fashion Passion. And I plan to get them in that exact order. Groot Canal is just one of those call attacks that you get a teammate to do that I somehow missed in my first playthrough. It's slightly understandable though, because it has to be on a charger type, which can only be found in chapters 10 and 13. Like all other attacks, it's completely random, so it was very easy to miss just as I did. But as pointed out in a comment under one of these guides for this game, you really have to be careful with these types of trophies, or really any in this game, as its checkpoints are very strict and you will be punished if you go too far or even too early sometimes. And you will have to either restart the entire chapter or make a new file. Yes, you heard me right. An entire new file, because simply going back to a specific chapter doesn't add any collectibles or archives to the chapter before or after. For example, let's say you needed 56 archives before you got to chapter 8, but you missed a few in chapter 7. You can't then go back to chapter 7 by selecting it and collect them, because once you finish the chapter, it's not going to carry over. It's going to send you to the main menu. Believe me, that's what I spent multiple attempts doing. So you have to be very careful with this. Long story short, on my first attempt, I went back to chapter 10 and I earned the trophy.
Yes, there we go. Get out of here, boy.
Then I was left with Thoughtful Captain and Lore Hoarder. The reason I wanted these back to back was because they were similar. Thoughtful Captain wants you to find half of the Guardians collectibles, while Lore Hoarder wants you to collect at least 65% of all categories, including the Guardians collectibles. So why not kill 2 birds with 1 stone, right? Right? Well, no. Fortunately, it's not that easy. Like I said, you can't exactly just go back to certain chapters for certain trophies. I collected most of the collectibles as I played, but it's not like that was my main objective, so I ended up having to replay the game. This is my first replay, but for some reason my skin stayed, and some of my collectibles did as well. I still had to collect certain items and do their talk scenes to unlock new items, but for the most part I lucked out, and by the time I got to just chapter 4 using the selling rocket path for the first time, the collectibles I was able to get earned me my trophy.
Man, this lady's really got a thing for skulls. I used to keep trophies from some of my old contracts.
Nice. An assassin's ring. Gamora would get a kick out of this.
But then comes the struggle with Lore Order. I watched a very useful guide that will be linked in the description that helped me get just about all the main collectibles, but the trophy didn't pop. So when I looked more into it, I realized it wasn't more than just collectibles and archives. It wanted characters, places, and maybe even skins. So then I realized just how hard this would be. In my opinion, what makes this trophy the hardest, and may even possibly be the reason for the bug, is instead of a solid 50 or 100%, they chose a completely odd percentage of 65% of all collectibles. I'm not sure if this messes with whatever calculating system is used for trophies like this, but it's been my theory for a little while. Regardless, this also makes it hard for the player themselves to even get this trophy, because instead of me being able to just count most of the compendium entries and collect only half, or just collecting all of them if it was 100%, or even just having a little bar or something in the corner to display my progress, or maybe even allowing players to go back in a chapter and keep their total amount, I had to restart the game multiple times and calculate the total amount of alleged compendium entries using guides and figuring out the percentage compared to 65. If it was 25 items, I had to figure out what 65% of 25 was and collect a rough amount of whatever the answer was. Now, if all that sounds way extra and too complicated for a single trophy, then that's my point exactly. Sure, you may be wondering why I tried this hard for a trophy, and I asked myself the same thing. But if you think about it, I had just 2 trophies left, and it was practically just one. The other, Fashion Passion, just required me and the other Guardians to wear every skin, which by this point I already collected all the skins. As seen with my God of War Platinums, I like to save the easiest trophy for last, so all I would have to do was wear every skin and boom, Platinum. Unfortunately, you'll eventually see why that wasn't going to happen. So in my head, I basically have just one trophy stopping me from this Platinum, and after all the time I spent on such a good game, I had to complete it and add this Platinum to my catalog. So I kept going and going and going, until at some point I realized with my math I had definitely collected 65%, most likely even more. Then I checked the comments under the guide I was using, and this is when it all came together. This trophy lore hoarder was bugged. This wasn't exactly the first time a trophy for me had issues, but it was the first time one was bugged in this way. It's the kind of bug where there's nothing you can do about it, because there's no way of knowing if your game hasn't registered that you got 65% or more, or if you actually got 65% or more. So you're just left to figure it out. The more research I did on this, the more things came up. People with similar experiences. People saying that it didn't pop until they loaded the game weeks later, or it didn't pop until they got rid of their files. There was entire Reddit threads about this. Almost every guide about it had one or more people complaining about the bug in its comment section, even on website guides, and it seemed it was way bigger than I thought. The crazy thing is, some people didn't face this issue at all, so it's like it's some targeted glitch that only happens to some users. It also seemed to be predominantly PlayStation users, if not only PlayStation users, who had to deal with this issue. I'm sure you've seen by now the comments I found while doing all this. Some could possibly be lost because I had an incident with data half a year ago when I first screenshotted most of these, so I had to figure them out again. But I'm covering their usernames even though it's technically public, because you never know, some people might not want their video or comment in this video, so, just be safe. Anyway, through this research, I found a video on Reddit from a Google search, which I'm starting to think has been deleted since I originally found it, but it's pretty much a video of someone recording their screen with all their compendium entries unlocked, and what they wrote on the post was pretty much a big rant with swearing and everything. Under the comments, someone actually mentioned something that had me thinking for a bit. It was something along the lines of, "I'll never understand people who base all their enjoyment of a video game on trophies." I thought this was a good point, and of course you had some people responding to this person either agreeing or going against defending trophy hunting and stuff. But it just made me think. In this scenario, at least for me, and I'm sure the person who posted as well, we don't hate the game because of the trophy not popping, and we're not basing our enjoyment of the game off that single trophy. We're just angry that such a simple trophy could be bugged this badly and affect the entire flow of a platinum. It's pretty frustrating when you've spent all these hours in a game and decide to platinum it, only to be shut down because of a small bug and be stuck at 99%. I and many others didn't originally plan on playing this game solely for the platinum, but rather as a replay value. When you're denied this last minute, it can be extremely frustrating, and I'm sure that's what this person posted their frustration for. Of course, it's not exactly necessary to do all that, and I'm sure they realize this, which explains the deletion of their post. But I can understand someone being angered by these bugs, and me personally, I understand if that did make someone slightly dislike a game. Yes, while it does technically mean they base their enjoyment off the trophy, it also makes sense because of the time and effort they invested into the game. Maybe that's just me though. Either way, it was a good point, and I feel like those who play games only for trophies can be a bit exhausting sometimes. Because not all games are made with that feature in mind. You'll never truly enjoy a game for what it is if that's how you view things. Of course, people can play games for whatever reason they want though, just sharing, because of the non-existent thread I found. This video already has been vastly different than any other Platinum video I've made, or possibly even any video period I've made so far, as I'm not usually one to make content critiquing media, at least as of now. So I'm just going to keep it brief as to how I eventually did gain this trophy. The main point was to show just how bugged it was, and now that I feel that has been explained in great detail, I'll give some tips using my experience. So for one, if you couldn't already tell, don't even try to go back in a chapter. For anything, no matter what, it's not worth it, seriously. In fact, most of the things I did you don't want to do. It will save you the headache. So as I mentioned, I had to replay the game already from the Thoughtful Captain trophy, and when I finished that playthrough, I noticed that there was still no trophy pop for Lore Hoarder, even after all the collectibles I had gotten. So instead of a new game plus again, I just started all over again, and this still wasn't enough. So knowing by now how this bug works, I made sure to get every entry I could, and this still wasn't enough. I replayed Chapter 6 multiple times where I did new strategies, such as new interactions to get an item earlier and meeting new characters for 2 compendium items entries, and it still wasn't enough. And I bought 1 out of the 3 dolls, and I was viewing all the archives in the Collector's Emporium, and still nothing. Eventually I got tired of not seeing a single trophy drop in such a long time that I just went ahead and unlocked Fashion Passion out of pure impatience. And also me somewhat wanting to test if my trophies for the game were just bugged in general or if it was just Lore Hoarder. But it did pop, and as you're going to see from my reaction, I was pretty over this by now.
See what happens if I pick this up?
I'd get a tattoo if I wanted.
I'm like gonna have to save every time now. Cause it won't do it. Would you know he didn't do the conversation, so now it doesn't appear on the items list.
I gotta say, I don't know what you told the Katati Guardians at the cave entrance, but they were very cooperative when
Bro, what? Every time I pick this thing up, the game just freezes. Oh, he's so skinny. Thank you! Oh my gosh, y'all know the pain. But even that doesn't count for the other trophy, so it doesn't even matter. I wanted to get that before the platinum, so it'd be more satisfying. And not as tedious. So I already knew I had every skin. But no. It's so frustrating, bro. At this point, there's only one option. Since apparently 23 collectibles is not enough.
Breaker's gonna do what?
Watch, the game's gonna glitch.
I always thought Gamora would eat her young.
See, and it just glitches. Every time. This is just wild. That this is actually a PS5 game.
I went ahead and beat the game again, and still nothing. I admit this was a really well put together game as far as the story and little Easter eggs, but after a 3rd or 4th time replaying, you know almost everything, except for maybe exactly what the archives say. So it gets tedious pretty fast, especially when I had other games I had and wanted to play at the time. So fast forwarding to probably my 5th total playthrough, and this includes all the extra time I had to spend on collecting every item I could find, and I just about lost the will to continue any longer. I got fed up with attempting this, and it pretty much seemed impossible at that point. I thought to myself how this is a completely different kind of difficulty. It's one thing when you have a difficult trophy, like what you might find in Jump King or Meat Boy, but at least those are attainable. Very, very, very difficult, but attainable. This, barely even possible, and that's where the true difficulty comes from. The will to keep going. The doubts of, is this even worth it? As you can imagine by now, I'm pretty much over this whole thing and desperate, and I knew there was just one option left. I had it in the back of my mind the whole time, and also had seen it a few times through all the digging I did. Only thing was, by this point, I unironically had 100% of the entire game. And I appreciate this fact, as well as the game and all its Easter eggs. But despite all this, I had to reset the entire game. I don't mean restart the story like I've been doing. I don't even mean deleting the game and re-downloading, because trust me, I tried that too. I mean going to saved data in my console's storage and wiping it completely off as if it had never existed and I never played it on that system. I lost the original footage, but boy did this hurt. I have never, and I mean never, had to wipe an entire game's data, let alone one that's not even indie because of some odd bug with a trophy. But you know what? There's a first for everything, right? Anyways, I continue to torment myself like I always do with these kind of things because I get bothered so much with incompletion. And I watched a very useful guide, the same one I've been using this entire time, that will also be below. And I played through the game again from absolute scratch, no room for mistakes. I eyeballed the guide every time I entered a new part of the game until randomly one night I got to about chapter 12 and
He's go.
it popped. I'm not sure if it was because chapter 11 had finished and therefore the entries loaded into my file, but either way, I didn't care. I was just glad this was over. I tried to turn my mic on during my reaction, but it wasn't having that for some reason, so instead we're just left with this quiet victory. I'm gonna have this outro pretty brief as well, as to be honest, I've been through the ringer with this one. This whole process, having to dig through all these old clips and rediscover the research I had already found. I know this was a lot of reading and pretty much just spam screenshots plastered onto a video where I'm in a sense just ranting, but I wanted to point out these issues. Not just as a complaint, but maybe a way for the devs to see this, or at least so the trophy hunters experiencing these problems can feel that they're heard and know that they're not the only ones that had to go through this problem. Overall, this game is actually a roller coaster in a good way, and I'm hoping there's a sequel. I recommend you play it and don't let this blur your thoughts on your first playthrough. This speaks nothing towards the actual story, more so the buggy mechanics, which aren't as common as you might think after watching this. Thanks for listening to my little tangent, and I hope this was still entertaining as a platinum video. I'll see you in the next platinum journey.